Tonight, on an all-new episode of Paranormal Inc., Chad and the team investigate Hayden Hill Sanitarium, notorious for its experimental, questionable, and extremely violent methods of therapy have only resulted in complete desolation of human life. The torturous rehabilitation methods were led by Dr. Vincent Chapman and his headmistress nurse, Betty Johansson. At the hands of their blood rain, over 158 recorded deaths took place in this very structure. Since its closure, an immense amount of strange occurrences have been well documented by parapsychologists, including huge spikes in the electromagnetic field, intelligent EVP recordings, shadows that seem to follow you around every corner, and frequent sightings of what is believed to be the spirit of 9-year-old Emily, the daughter of Dr. Chapman and nurse Johansson. For tonight's special episode, we have enlisted a group of unbiased volunteers to join the Paranormal Inc. crew to serve as a witness to the findings of this controversial investigation.
In October, I remember sitting there, it was like a perfect October evening, and just binge watching a ton of like ghost hunting TV shows. I'm obsessed with that. Me and my wife are both obsessed with all that stuff. And it just kind of clicked, like, oh, that could be kind of an interesting opportunity for a concept, because not only is it you do all kinds of typical locations and make them interesting, and then having all these ghosts and stuff, but you also have these ghost hunter characters that are more human based, that can have that human interaction and drive the story forward, and it be seemingly natural because they're supposed to be these human characters. So that was kind of the initial thought, I guess. And then this year we had launched Infected out in Camp Snoopy. So plus they had Trapped going, and they were doing the key rooms. And Laura Hanneman, who was in charge of entertainment and Scary Farm at the time, she was looking for ways to keep pushing the envelope. And one of the things when we decided, when we landed on paranormal, was like, we don't want it to be another just standard maze. Like, we wanted to have its edge. And one of the things that came out early was standing in if you could stand still in this large room and have all the scares happening around you, and have the atmosphere change and things move to now you're not in this big room, it's broken up. And that's kind of was the birth of the big showroom that you start the maze in. And then that was honestly like the major part. Like, it was almost like that was all done, designed, concepted out, and then the rest of the maze came. Like, it was so much focus on that first showroom. And I don't even think we had decided it was going to be in this old abandoned a hospital at the time. Like, we just know we wanted this larger room and the things to move and manipulate around you. And then from there, one of my favorite mazes as a fan was the old Asylum maze. And I thought, okay, it's been done. It's been done a million times since then, but what can we do to make it different? And so that way, we had this abandoned asylum that is very, very common in haunted attractions, but by throwing this ghost hunting spin on it, it kind of made it fresh and new again. And that's kind of how the whole concept of paranormal came together.
It really overall starts off with the very front of the building, where there's giant TV monitors, and it's constantly running promo ads for the show called Paranormal Inc. And it's the name for the maze. Roll credit.
There are the two paths that you can go down. The left path follows the story of this nurse that had a history of abusing patients, and the other is the doctor's side that had a history of experimenting on patients.
The very first year, we actually had a 3.5 minute long opening show. It was unprecedented. That was something that I've personally never seen, and a lot of people in the community had never seen before, where it's this big, huge, production, essentially, where there's this full story arc in and of itself in this opening show. And it kicks off with Chad essentially welcoming you in, come on in, fill the space. General kind of line work, just getting everybody in and set up. And then he starts to kind of be okay, welcome welcome. We're gonna do a live recording. You guys are gonna join us on the investigation and really get everything kind of started until he counts down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the cameras start to roll.
The story building for Paranormal Inc. was very interesting because, like, I think that was probably the one element that screwed up everybody the most. And I can tell you it was such a rough time doing it too, was telling everybody that, like, hey, we're filming a live TV show, this is Paranormal Inc., you know, like, because they think they kind of go into the maze, like in the pre-show area, thinking that's the start of the maze. And so when we still have like a time limit to get people through, but of course everybody's so scared because they use the traditional maze where they walk in and they're afraid somebody's going to immediately come after them. Like, no, we have to emphasize to you, like, no, it's fine, come forward, move forward. Like, it's like, but you can't blame the guests because, like, no, this is a trick. Which in reality it is, like, but it's a well set up trick. The investigators kind of had a different perspective as well, because they said you can either make it as cheesy as you want and show that it's fake, but ultimately everything is supposed to be, when Emily comes out, everything becomes real. So you can be a true believer in all this stuff, or you can just fake it out. And that's the thing, is that it's, because I think they even emphasize that too a little bit with I think when Barry's character, like, if you really get the opportunity to listen to the pre-show, they say, I think it's like Barry's like got the camera high off to the side. He's like, it's just a bunch of junk, and I just kind of put this together. It's not supposed to work, like, you know. But then of course comes back on camera. It's totally gonna work.
Barry in the basement. Barry.
This thing is never going to work.
Barry, you're live.
Oh,
sorry guys.
Yeah.
Barry, tell them about the ghost pod.
We built this EMF simulator that, when engaged, it would radiate the electricity through the walls, supercharging the atmosphere, and in theory, a ghost should appear. So
let's try it out, Barry.
Yeah. Let's give it a shot.
Let's do it.
Barry, being Barry, it's my way or the highway. He thinks he's the big shot of the show, for many different reasons. And what ends up happening is he gets just frustrated that the device isn't working properly, and so he turns the dial up to 11, powers it on.
Hell breaks loose in the showroom, and as you go down through the maze, you're following their investigation. And we did some kind of fun effects where you can see the poltergeist activity, but then you see the ghosts in the screens. And as you continue to follow them down, then you come across Barry, who is now stuck in the basement, which is the ground zero, the epicenter of where everything kind of went wrong. And then from there, you see Barry get pulled into the netherworld, and you follow him through. It was like 2 years ago, we redid the ending, and I called it like the glitch that you're walking through. So as you go through and get pulled into this other world, you now pop back into the Hayden Hill Sanitarium, and you're back in like the 40s, as if like the hospital is up and running. And through these like energy glitches, you get to see the netherworld on through the walls that's creeping in. You know, we had this, I think, written in the original treatment. The doctor and the nurse were married, and then this child was actually their child that, you know, they didn't want, and it became this whole really crazy in-depth thing.
Actually, in the video, after everything's kind of going haywire down in the basement, before it kind of cuts out and Emily shows up, you can see a shadow demon walking up behind Barry.
This is the connection between our world and the spirit world, and that's what people don't realize, that the spirit world is really, you're just being consumed more and more by it. And that way there's nothing left of the hotel now, or not the hotel, the asylum. And just and I remember kind of looking more at those details of like, wow, like it does get scarcer. Like there's less and less of human-made structures now. Like now we're just going into caverns and stuff like that. Because I think the biggest transition, when you realize, wow, this is really starting to fall apart. And I think it's the last time you actually see anything. Well, back when I did it, now it's a little bit different, is when you would see Barry and he'd get pulled up and then the shadow demon drops down. Is like, yeah, you see the pentagram like on the ground, which for some reason people don't see that. It's just there's just few man-made structures, and I think that was the last time you would see it in the original version of the maze. But then they changed out the end now to where you go through that weird laser room, which my favorite room, as the shadow demon. And now you just pop up, and I guess it's like the office, like the nurse's office, I think it is,
where one of the scrims was actually. So there's that demon that's above you when the two paths meet, and then there's the possessed investigator. There's also like a scrim of Emily where she kind of like pops out, and inside of there is actually where that location where the wall has been broken away is actually where the nurse Betty Johansson and the doctor kept Emily, because that's their child. And so you see her toys and a little cot and unfortunately her body.
You know, those details are it's tucked away, and it's tucked away on purpose. You know, it's kind of there for, I don't know how long has that maze been there for all these years later, to have things for the diehard fans to still be able to discover. You know, and I don't know how much longer that maze will be around, so definitely keep an eye out for all those little things. And, you know, even like the random graffiti and writing on the walls, like there's a lot of hidden Easter eggs and all of that stuff as well.
I was one of the thousands of shadow demons. That is definitely like the most prevalent monster in that maze. But back then they were shadow demons and soul eaters. Those were the only non-human characters.
Shadow demon is probably the most fun, and I think even just really quickly with that character though, I remember my character as that shadow demon was very curious.
From Scare School, they told us that we were supposed to be a demon not from this world, and we were supposed to make noises that weren't from this world. So the snarl, it was a no, because anyone can do a snarl. The screech, everyone was doing the screech that year, but we were told to try to come up with something different. If we learned dead languages, we could use dead languages. From my understanding, there was 2 people in the maze that use Latin.
So where I was, right when you came into the room, was an open door on the right-hand side, and the door itself was at a 90 degree to the opening, and there was a long, like old school kind of metal gurney, and I'm kind of like walking around the room, like kind of just doing my thing, guaranteeing I looked absolutely awful, but then sat there and hopped up onto that metal gurney and was kind of standing behind the door, and then stomped on the metal plate and realized how loud and jarring it was.
We had a lot of kids, and so when there were kids in there, I would like to get in their faces, but at the same time I would never scare them. And they were probably more intrigued about me because they saw me as like an animal. One little girl pet me. She pet my horns on my head. It was really sweet. And I didn't know if I should act like a dog and started like moving my foot. And it's funny, I did. I just did it out of like, and they were laughing, but like, of course the parents will like, I like just hissed at them. I did some noise at them and they got freaked out. And then she had like these glow toys and I was just like poking at them and stuff like that. And she's like, he belongs to me.
One fun moment I had, and I'm not sure if everyone knows her, but Amanda Cox, she was one of our paranormal investigators. And backstage, I was minding my business, and she came up to me and goes, "Hey, you're the one in the showroom tonight, right?" I said, "Yeah, why, what's up?" She goes, "I have an idea, but you're going to have to trust me." I said, "Because I get tired at yelling at people because they won't listen. So my voice gets tired. So if I die in the middle of the set, I think it'd be great. And the only way I can die is by having a demon come after me." So we did a few test runs backstage, and it came down to the point where she would yell at everybody, go this way, go that way. And of course, people wouldn't listen because they were so mesmerized by Emily flying across the room. And it got to the point where I got everyone's attention just well enough, and I can go up to Amanda, grab her by the neck, and then choke her out to the ground. And everyone in the showroom was staring at us, wasn't moving. I was like, I think we're causing a bigger distraction than what we're supposed to do. But I think that added so much more to the show because I didn't realize how many people were watching it. When I got up and looked, I was wearing my white contacts that night too. And I looked at someone, and I kid you not, their life just drained from them because they turned pale, and I was just like, "Oh, you're behind me. I'm sorry you had to see that." But it was fun because they didn't expect it, and neither did I, because it was my first time doing that. But it was super fun. And Amanda and I had a huge laugh afterwards. We talked backstage, and we're like, "Holy crap, that is the best thing ever."
There was one girl, she just collapsed because her boyfriend and her friend went on one end, and she just couldn't. And she's like, "I can't go through this maze. I can't do it." And of course, there's like 2 shadow demons hanging over her. I'm like, "Guys, stop." But it was almost too funny. But like, yeah, she absolutely could not go through and be separated. And then she swiftly complained about being separated. But I'm like, what do you do? That's the point of the maze.
We got fitted for our costumes. They came with these really thick latex gloves, and I didn't like them simply because you didn't have no mobility in your hands. You couldn't bend your fingers. You couldn't do anything. So I ended up coming up with these gloves, and what they are is pool noodles that I melted down and shaped them just right. And they're with the silicone glove, like a simple work glove. I don't know if you can see the branding on it. Simple work glove. I painted them black. You can see the blue pool noodle. Hot glued them on, and I asked our costume designer, "Is it okay if I make my own?" He said, "Go for it. See what happens." I said, "Okay." Spent about 40 minutes trying to think on how to make gloves at home. I saw these really cool articulated fingers that someone's making, but they're out of plastic and they're about $200 each. And I was like, no, thank you. So again, I got a pool noodle and melted them down, and now I'm able to, I still can't bend my fingers because that's how big my finger is, but I extended my fingers by a whole 4 inches. And again, in the dark rooms, seeing this come at you is a different story with a dark light behind you. And, it just added more to my character in a sense.
The doctor and the nurse knew about hauntings and believed in all of that. So what they were doing is they built the lockers for the bodies in such a way that the spirits couldn't escape. So those spirits of the unrested are still in there today, and they're banging and clanging and trying to get out because they're trapped there. And because it's been so long, they're just so fiercely upset that they're physically able to rattle the locks and rattle the doors to try to escape from the morgue.
I remember for the longest time it was the morgue and the I think it was like I want to say it was like the infirmary wing. It looked like there was like she wasn't like a nun, I guess, but she was an orderly, I think, yeah. And like, because that one, like the morgue, just like that one was really freaky because there was like at that point there's like very tight corners, so like there was a lot of there wasn't a lot of place you could really go to. So if there's a performer in that room, like, you're trapped. And of course you got all these what do you call it? Like, I guess like the slots of the where they're holding the bodies are all opening and closing. So like, you don't know if anybody's gonna pop out of those. Like, you can't trust anything in that piece, really. But of course with the orderly wing, yeah, it's just of course you got woman crying, the typical, and it's very loud because like there's 2 speakers, I believe, that it's a small room and it's just very loud. So you just hear this crying, but there's a lot of hiding places in that one, and yeah, that one just hated it because somebody would always get me in that one too. It always, and I'm like, damn. But like, I think it's just like, yeah, those. Paranormal Inc. just has its moments. Like, almost every room has a good scare, but I think that's where they would get me the most, was in that one.
What scared me the most about Paranormal, and this is just the stories that I hear between other actors, that this room is and this room is haunted, this room is really haunted, this room can get to your head. And I've always heard everything about this morgue room, and everyone said the morgue room is really haunted. I said, what do you mean by that? There's actually people that walk past you, and you think they're walking past you, but there's nobody there. And the morgue room has these things flapping, and it makes a lot of noise, and it can get repetitive over time. And then there's also these lights that flash, and they disorient your eyes. And you have to be very cautious about certain things, because if you don't pay attention, you can bump into somebody or practically hurt yourself, like hitting against the wall. But I was always afraid of that room because people always told me it's haunted. I'm not one for ghosts, and I really, this is my thought and my beliefs. I really don't believe in any of that. But when people tell you over and over again that they see stuff, and it's coming from every other person in the maze, you kind of have a vibe for it, let's just say. And one night when I was stuck in there, I was scared for about 20 minutes, and then I realized everything was fake.
But I personally didn't see anything. But I've heard a lot of accounts, though, of people experiencing some weird stuff in there when nobody else was there.
I remember when we were building it, there was like the morgue was everything in that room was fabricated, like brand new wood from Home Depot, built it in place. So I don't know about the morgue room, other than it's what it's representing is creepy, I guess. But the one weird thing that we had when we were building it is when props brought in this old antique wheelchair, and there was some weird energy and vibes that were going on around that. I feel like, I don't remember specifically now, but once that wheelchair was wheeled into the building and brought in, like, I remember some kind of weird things happening throughout the maze at that point. But that wheelchair, if you go on the doctor side where the projection screen is, it's behind the screen. And we put it back there on purpose so that way people couldn't get to it, because it is a legit antique from back in the day, some hospital. So that's kind of a cool one as well.
I'm Shadow Demon. I'm ready to give my fucking best here, and I climb up top some of the camera stuff, and the camera that's actually supposed to be there, like it's a live feed, I broke it. I climbed up it, and then apparently you could only see it for a hot second, and I had this look on my face, but I was like, oh, shit. But I'm like, no, just roll with it. And our investigator tripped, I think, on the gurney, and so he's just lying on the floor lifeless, and I'm just like over him. He's trying not to laugh, and like another Shadow Demon had also tripped over something, and they went with that take, because they took 2 takes for each of the sides, but no, they went with that one.
Me being me, I wanted to look at the lighting. I thought no one was coming through, so they're like, oh, that's a cool light, that's a cool prop. And I look at the window and I see people staring at me. I'm all, can you guys see me? Oops. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew because I went through the maze with the show lights on as not a guest. We went through this during scare school. We did the maze with the lights off, and we got to see everything. I knew what the room did. I just completely forgot because I was having a little moment like, oh, they're using one of these lights. That's cool. They're using a heat lamp here. That's cool. And that's a cool prop. And holy crap, I'm live. I did not realize people were behind me and they were staring at me like, the heck? And I saw my lights dim and I was like, oh, perfect opportunity. I put my head and hands against the glass and, waited. The lights turned off and I was just like, and they freaked out so much that I was just like, oh my God, this works. That's so cool. I didn't know it would work.
The way that gurney was attached to the ground was little thin like metal brackets that they just kind of like screwed in. Get about halfway through the first night and I've been just doing my thing and I snapped all of the metal brackets. There was only 3 of them. So then I came back the next night and there were 8 of them. So not just a couple extra, but and they weren't just bolted to the ground, they were bolted to the door, to the wall. Last 20 minutes of the night, I'm having a blast. It's my first Saturday, and there's just a ton of people coming in. And sure enough, about 15 minutes left in the night, 20 minutes left in the night, last bracket pops. So Jon Cooke came up to me at the end of the night, and he's like, hey, how were the brackets? And I'm like, well, you're probably not going to be happy. I broke them all again. And I'm like, I really love that spot. And is there any way to do something else? And he's like, don't worry. I really love you in that spot. You're really making it your own. There's nothing that you can do to break out of how I'm going to attach it for next weekend. Come back Thursday the next week because we don't have Sunday the first weekend. And it's chained. Not little dinky chain, but chain. He took 3-inch bolts and was bolting it into the ground and into the wall in 5 different places. And he's like, if you break those chains, I will be damn impressed. Almost got through all of them.
I don't even, this one woman's just fighting to get through, and I'm like, it's too late. You gotta go. They'll be fine. I'm sure. It's okay. And the woman just blasted right past me, knocked me down, but she was like, where's the door? And the shadow demon who was in there, he sticks his head out, he's like, bleh! And just closed the door on her. And she didn't realize it was just a wall. She's like, where'd it go? And I'm like, you just gotta go that way.
There's a lot of Haunt Monsters names on the walls, Otis is one, Rage is one, which is Ted. There's one that says all roads lead to hell, meaning it doesn't matter if you choose left or right, you end up in hell. So that's the graffiti, and then there's some other interesting stuff. So in the room where you see Barry get pulled into the ceiling, the floor is a glowing pentagram, or it was originally, and then people were kind of having a hard time with that, so we actually flipped the design around to make it facing upright opposed to the inverted pentagram. So that's kind of an interesting nod that happened in there. One of my favorites is the nurse that you see in the video that's stabbing the patient before you get to the nurse is actually Pasta, who's in charge of the actors now at Scary Farm.
Of the maze, so you see the I think it's the registry that you see. It's projecting, projection mapping on the book. Yeah, so definitely a lot of names on there, but that's one of those things you have to sit down and look at. Which of course, if you're just going through the maze normally, you don't have time to look at it. But a lot of big names in that one for sure.
The demon at the end that does the big roar, that's me. I did the audio on that one. That's kind of a fun one. That's always my favorite, is creating all the weird audio files with Dan in the audio lab. But Easter eggs, there's a bajillion in that maze, dude.
Once the lights come off, and the fog starts creeping in and all the sounds. You hear things that you didn't hear when you were walking through with the lights on.
Walking through that one, that truly, like, I thought I had spaces to hide in black magic. This one is just littered with places, like, in so many dark spots where if you're a shadow demon, it's a playground. Like, it is a wonderful, wonderful playground for a haunt monster.
Look at that first showroom alone. I feel like that was a pretty large feat at the time for what we were doing, you know, and creating this show and having everything communicate together, and then that also sets off a chain of events throughout the rest of the maze. Like, everything is tied and timed off of that one showroom experience. So I think, like, there was a lot of time, energy, and love put into creating that experience there. And then just I think the other really cool thing is just the same thing when you're paying attention to the details and listening to the audio track going on through there. You pick up a lot of things. There's you know, we wanted to make sure it felt like an authentic ghost hunting experience as much as you can in that setting. So there was definitely lots of forethought and like I said, like, paying attention to those details, not only from myself but also from everyone that was involved in that project. You know, James Sidler was the lighting designer. He's now in charge of another Cedar Fair park, but at the time he was the lighting designer for the maze. And I just remember, like, being in that, just living in that maze till like 5 a.m. every night with him, making sure that everything was timed out perfectly and everything was done correctly.
Who calls the shots? Oh, the nurses always call the shots.
At the end of the day, nurses call the shots.